You're listening to RGTR, Red Gull Talk Radio.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in. You're listening to Kings of the Roundtable on RGTR, a sports and professional wrestling radio show that is by the people and for the people. Whether you're in Long Island or Long Beach, Key West or Point Barrow, or all points in between, pull up a chair, grab a beverage of your choice, and prepare yourself for a show that pulls no punches and always steals the show. Now, please welcome the Kings of the Roundtable, JP, Jordan, and HD.
I'm going to kick off this inaugural voyage of Kings of the Roundtable by asking all you listeners out there, specifically my two co-hosts, two questions. One is going to be asked every week. One is just going to be a one-time thing. Question number one, how many of the places mentioned in the intro have you guys actually do? Either you've been to Long Island, Long Beach, Point Barrow, or Key West?
No, I've been to Long Beach.
I know you've been to Long Island. I've been to Long Beach, too.
Long Island. Long story.
Yeah.
We won't say it.
Long story. Too many shows needed for that one.
Yeah, we don't have the FCC permission to tell those stories, so we'll just keep that under wraps.
I've never been to Point Barrow. I've never been to Key West, but I have been to Long Beach and Long Island. Jordan, you've been to Long Beach, right?
I've been in the LBC, but that's about it.
Never been to Long Island. All right. Question two. What is everybody currently drinking? Since it says pull up a drink, what's everybody currently drinking? Since this is your friendly neighborhood bar and grill.
Well, I have a very lovely Long Island iced tea. Thank you. Nice plug.
Nice plug, Long Island iced tea. Jordan, what do you got in the terms of the beverage department?
Sounds absolutely fantastic. I, however, am rehydrating with a nice crisp Gatorade. Orange.
Well, I currently am drinking a glass of nice cold iced water. Boy, I'm the lame one here tonight. I got to get my wife to.
You say that just tonight, like it's a new thing. Come on.
You know, I'm not allowed to swear on this program, but you can do something involving lips in my rear end. Hey, guys, it's the Roundtable here on RGTR. We're the new show in town, but we're the show that's going to rock the world and take the world by nation. We are a sports and professional wrestling broadcast that is going to be live every Thursday night, and possibly more. Here's what we are, though, folks, and we're going to introduce ourselves. But first, let me give you a rundown of what to expect on this show. We're going to be the radio show that is going to be old school radio. We're not going to come on here and berate people for having opinions. We're going to have takes, and we're going to have opinions that are hot takes that are valid. And believe me, we could sling opinion to be opinionated. We could be controversial as much as the next guy, but we don't need to be demeaning in order to get our point across. We don't need to cuss and swear, even though, trust me, all three of us can do it as much as the next guy. But we don't need to get on here and say vulgar language and be, nasty and demeaning and insult people in order to do so. We're also not going to give news, and then when we get proven wrong that our news is fake, we're not going to walk it back to get ourselves over. Point blank, we're here to give you folks a radio show, not to get ourselves over. That's one thing that absolutely bothers me. And a couple weeks ago, this was put on point display. I'm a specific sports talk radio host in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, who has some wrestling ties. Paul, you know who I'm talking about. Know exactly what I'm talking about. Claimed he had a source that claimed that TJ Watt walked out on Pittsburgh Steelers team meetings and was acting generally like a horse behind. TJ himself went on there and said, this is absolutely 100% inaccurate. Said host said, I'm standing by my word. You won't get that crap on this show. We're not here to get ourselves over. We're here to get the sports world over and to give you quality radio like you deserve to hear. So that's what the point of this show is. It is sports radio by the people, for the people. Let me introduce my co-host. So at this time, first and foremost, we've got a U.S. Army vet, one of the finest, the true, the proud, the few, the man, the myth, the legend himself, Mr. Jordan Cruz, professional wrestling superstar, the man who beat the man who carries the sun, or the man who grabs the sun. I always get a kick out of it, and I screwed up his name there, but he's been in there with some of the best in the business. He's been served the tours. He's done several tours of duty. He's the pride and true of the state of Louisiana. Believe me, he was posing a Heisman pose when Joe Burrow was still in diapers. Jordan, what's going on, my brother?
What is going on, JP? Happy to be a part of this. Oh, and can I say, I was having a hard time containing myself during that intro. That song got me just super fired up for today.
See, it was an intro fit for a man, a myth, and a legend like yourself, my man. I'm certainly honored and privileged to have you as part of this show. I know we've had plenty of good discussions on sports, and I said, you know what? I can't think anybody else that I think is more deserving of this opportunity than my good friend Jordan.
Absolutely. Glad to be here. Glad to share whatever small amount of knowledge I have.
Can I mention NWA Superstar as well? I mean, that's not exactly hidden knowledge as well. I forgot to mention that point as well. Part of the same promotion that Frank Gotch was once in, that Abraham Lincoln was once in. I mean, this guy, he's a superstar waiting to happen. Actually, he's already there now. But go to introduce my other co-host. He doesn't have as many accolades as Jordan. Not many of us do, but he's the proud and true of the home of independence itself, Philadelphia, PA. He's been hit by a few cars in his day. He's been to Long Island with me, and we've raised some shenanigans over the past 30, 31 years. And he's hosted a few shows with me, raised some cane and taken some names. Mr. HD himself, the hardcore degenerate. What's going on there, Paul? How you doing, brother?
I am doing. Oh, yeah, that's right. We got to watch your language here. I am doing phenomenal. Thank you for asking. And I just would like to say I agree with Jordan. That intro, I wish I still had my long hair, man. I just wanted to headbang with that. That was phenomenal, man. I love that. That was awesome.
I'll tell you what, man. Lane Staley was he was a lyrical genius. Lane Staley did things with that he could speak, that hit the soul. And crazy, I was actually talking to you guys beforehand. Lane Staley, Kurt Cobain, two lyrical geniuses that they could get you pumped up to run through walls. Both of them actually died on the same day, 7 years apart. Crazy stuff.
You never know when your time comes, man.
That's the truth. You never know until you know. But hey, real quick though, some of the things we're going to talk about here on today's show, and I think we pretty much summarized what this show is going to be about. Again, it's going to be all talk. You're not going to get the garbage that you see on some of these other sports talk radio shows, because that's not what we're about. But on today's show, though, we're going to talk about the life and times of an NFL superstar that was taken far too soon, and the effects of CTE once again seemingly rearing its ugly head in the National Football League. Got a lot of stuff going on in terms of quarterbacks. We're going to see a mad quarterback cycle, including one big trade today involving your Philadelphia Eagles, Paul. Talk about the NFL draft involving several quarterbacks, possible sleepers. We'll talk about our teams that, what we want to see our teams do in the draft. We had some big happenings at NXT yesterday. We'll talk about that as well. Also, a big signing in Major League Baseball, contract extension for a superstar, but was it too soon? We'll discuss that and more. But real quick, give an introduction of each of ourselves, though. Paul, I gave you a brief synopsis of who you were. Why don't you fill us in a little bit more? Tell the people a little bit about who the hardcore degenerate really is, because I gave a brief picture of what to expect. Why don't you fill in the blanks?
Okay, well, I'm a Pisces. I'm 6 foot, 212 pounds. Oh, wait, this isn't a dating app, is it? Crap.
This ain't fish, bro. This ain't fish. Just ain't Tinder. Plus, you're married. I'm not getting you down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, my wife's in the other room. Yeah. You know me, I don't like to talk about myself. I dabbled in wrestling, done broadcasting with you since 2009? Something along those lines.
2006?
What was it? 2000? When was Pull No Punches?
That was 2009.
2009.
But you dabbled in the crappy snake pit with me too. Wait, that sounds really bad. I mean, no, you dabbled.
No context. That's something.
Yeah, that's right. I got to fill the context. Yeah. You actually did. We did a D-list radio show that we weren't proud of back in 2006 that you were part of with me as well.
Yeah, the Blow Zone Radio Network. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not around, so it's not a plug for them. So we don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
Just living the dream, man. That's it. I don't talk about myself. You know that.
He just talks to himself, folks, and he answers himself too.
hey, who's going to be more honest to me than me?
It's thinking out loud.
Valid point. If you're thinking out loud, Mr. Cruz, you're thinking properly. Hey, Jordan, let's kick it to you. I gave a brief synopsis of who you are. Why don't you fill in the blanks on Jordan Cruz?
Well, you've hit just about all the points, but that's about it. Louisiana born and raised, living in San Diego now. Served in the Marine Corps for 5 years. I played sports my whole life growing up. I was about good enough to decide to be a pro wrestler instead. So that's where I'm at now.
NWA superstar, folks, by the way. And he's not doing the cameos yet, but he will be soon enough, right? Got to get this guy some money, man. He's got the $1 million looks. He's got the $1 million talent. Got to start getting that $1 million paychecks. AEW, you listening? WWE, you listening? Let's make it happen.
Well, no. WWE blocked any kind of third party, man. Remember that.
That's true.
True. I guess they have their logic and reasons for doing it, but it is what it is. But a little bit about me, I'm a little bit of everything, whole lot of nothing. I've been in sports radio since 2001, 2000. I've been actually worked in sports talk radio here in Phoenix since 2013. Working with Paul for a while. I'm in the pro wrestling scene, worked for AWF here in Phoenix. We're actually crossed paths with Mr. Cruz for the first time. And now we're on here doing this. And, the thing about me, I'm a sports aficionado. I've been following it for a long time. Diehard Miami Dolphins fan, played sports, played baseball, football in school, and found out I was good enough to talk about it, much better at talking about it than I actually wasn't doing it. So there's our introductions, folks, here on Red Gull Radio, RGTR. And let's get into the news topics now, folks. And first story we have is professional athlete, again, taken from us far too soon, Vincent Jackson, found dead in a Tampa hotel room earlier this week, just 38 years old. Early signs are that, he battled CTE, had alcoholism. This CTE, man, just an absolute terrible, terrible battle that a lot of professional athletes deal with, especially in the football scope. And not to bag on the NFL, but it seems like these stories become more and more frequent on a regular basis. But Jordan, kicking it to you. He made his waves in San Diego there. Big star for the Chargers for quite a few years, had a real solid career. One of the NFL's better wide receivers for, several seasons. It's just another big loss for the NFL.
It's obviously terrible to hear. As far as my memory of him was actually when he was in a Buccaneers jersey, as being a Saints fan and them being division rivals and whatnot. But yeah, a heck of a player and by all accounts a heck of a person as well. So it's something you hate to hear. But what I will say is there is no bright side to situations like this. But what was good to see was there are several ex-NFL players, Ryan Leaf, Will Blackman, guys like that come to mind, and hearing their outpouring of and kind of banding together, because a lot of these ex-NFL players seems like once their career's done, they're kind of forgotten about, and that's just that's not something that should be the thing.
No, I agree with that. And the whole sad nuts part of the story is this guy had been living in a hotel since January. Okay, he watched the Super Bowl, the Buccaneers, who he spent the final years of his career with playing for, watching in a hotel room. That to me is sad. This is a guy who made a lot of money in his career, but had an impactful career. He was a very good receiver who I think deserved far more. And people will sit there and listen and say, you know what? Well, he should have saved his money wiser. You know what? That doesn't resonate with me. That doesn't work for me because it's, as a professional athlete, these teams make so much money off of these guys' backs, and these contracts are so loosely based that there's a thing called guaranteed money, and you're only as good as your last snap for these teams. And once you're gone, and that guaranteed money goes away very quickly. And when you're used to living a certain lifestyle and certain money, it's hard to step away. It is, and you become very quickly forgotten. And Vincent Jackson sadly became one of those players, Paul.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing to note is even with the whole CTE thing, up until January, anybody that knew this guy knew his charitable contributions. He would give money freely to charities, to organizations. This guy, no matter what was asked of him, he would do it freely. not even second guessing himself, not even thinking twice. He would go out and say, yes, I will be there. I will make this appearance. I will donate to this charity. The guy, it was one of probably the nicest guys that you could hear coming out of the league dealing with CTE. It's unbelievable.
Yeah,
Like I was
and
doing
now
research today on it. It's insane.
And he died in a hotel room alone. I mean, that's the saddest part of this of all is a man who gave so much to so many died in a hotel room. Where were the Buccaneers? Where were the Chargers? Where was the National Football Player, NFLPA? Where were all these people? Why was this man in a hotel room on his own? The man battled alcoholism. Everybody's talking about it now. Where were they? And I know, he's a 38-year-old man. He's a 37, he's a grown adult who had to make his own decisions. Only you can stop that yourself. But there's a thing called intervention. These people could step in and stop. We've heard so many stories. Jordan, you talked about one. Ryan Leaf. How many stories have we heard about the NFL intervening for Ryan Leaf? And Leaf didn't have 1/4 of the career that Vincent Jackson had. No disrespect to Leaf. As a matter of fact, I mean, the stories we hear about Leaf are generally no disrespect to the man, but what a failure he was. About, it's just the precautionary tale of, he was the bust. He was a guy that was picked after Peyton Manning. That, the biggest story we heard about him was him yelling at the reporter in San Diego there, and him failing out of the league. I mean, Vincent Jackson was a Pro Bowler. Vincent Jackson, I'm not going to say he was one of the best receivers in the NFL, but he was pretty high up the list. He was definitely a pretty darn good one. He made a decent amount of coin. This is a guy who was, an upper echelon player at his position that had problems. Where was the NFLPA to step in and say, look, Vincent, we're going to get you the help you need?
Yeah, I want to tack on to that. You were saying, he was a 3-time Pro Bowler. The guy wasn't a scrub. I have the stats right in front of me. In his career between 2005 and 2016, 540 receptions for 9,080 yards. That's not a scrub.
No, that's not practice squad numbers here, folks. I mean, you're talking a guy who averaged over 18 yards a catch, 4-5 times in his career. And that's pretty impressive. This is somebody who put up big time yards.
It's a shame, man. It's a damn shame. It really is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I just hope that the NFLPA, ex-football players, people in general can hopefully learn from this and figure out, hey, look, you can put up all these, you can make new rules, you can create new fancy helmets and everything, but these problems, CTE, it's a real issue across sports. And just because a guy, whether he was a Pro Bowler or whether he was, bench most of his career, I mean, you're taking those hits. So hopefully they figure out a way to, you can't eliminate something like CTE, but, create some kind of program for these guys when they their career, when they decide to retire, if you get cut and don't get signed again, that, you can't just forget about these guys like they weren't around.
If I was the NFLPA, oh, go ahead, Jay. Sorry.
No, go ahead, Paul. Go ahead, please.
No, well, I was going to say, if I was the NFLPA, if you have a player that's leaving the league, you have Christopher Nowinski's, I can't think of the name right now. I would have every NFL player that's leaving the league go down there, get tested, just to see where their, the brain is at that particular time. If there's any kind of degradation, they should be monitored. That's just my opinion, but I just think that would be a decent, hit it before it, becomes this situation. You know what I mean?
I agree 100%. I mean, and honestly, look, we're far enough into the game with CTE. And it was first announced in 2009 that the NFLPA was going to collaborate with the CSTE school in Boston University to start working on this.
I mean, we're going on almost a decade since Junior Seau committed suicide, when really the effort started amping up. Okay, think about that. Almost 1 decade. Yet we're continuing to get these stories about athletes that are still. And you could, like Jordan said, you could build all the fancy helmets and all the you could have all the outreach programs you want. There needs to be more done, because you're going to continue to have horror stories like Vincent Jackson and Junior Sailor that are going to continue on until, and you can't stop that. You can't stop the contact from happening. We'll continue this discussion here in the next segment. You're listening to Kings at the Roundtable here on RGTR Radio.
You're listening to RGTR, Red Gull Talk Radio.
We now return to the Three Amigos. Or is it Three Stooges?
Cool. Fire, 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 fire.
It's Kings of the Roundtable with HD, Jordan, and JP on RGTR, Red Gull Talk Radio.
I gotta tell you, I had a vision for that comeback bumper that involved Beavis and Butthead. Gabriel Andrews made it even better than I expected him to. Nothing beats Beavis and Butthead, Paul. Nothing.
No, can't. I guess they're coming back from what I hear.
Yeah, I guess they're going to be growing away. They came back briefly in 2011 for a year.
Like for 1 year, and then they went away again.
Yeah, it turned into a total flop.
I guess this time around they're going to be adults with kids. I don't know how they're going to make that. How they grew up in. They didn't grow up in 20 years, but they grew up in 9, 10. I don't know.
Well, look at Bart Simpson. He's been the same age for 30 years now.
Yeah, Lisa's better. Not Lisa. Maggie's been a baby for. Yeah, they don't grow up. They just stay the same. Segment 2 here, Kings at the Roundtable, talking about Beavis and Butthead. We talked about Lane Staley. Boy, we talk about Lane Staley, Bart Simpson, Kurt Cobain, Beavis and Butthead. Boy, we're all over we talk about all sorts of people on here in this program, don't we?
Absolutely. Who wants to be pigeonholed to one subject?
That's right.
It's just boring radio.
You will not hear boring radio on here. You won't be pigeonholed with mindless nonsense on here. You won't be lambasted for having opinions. You won't be talked down to, nor will you be berated for your thoughts. That's Kings at the Roundtable. Why we'll give you radio that is only fit for a king? Because we are by the people and for the people. JP, HD, and JC. Not that JC, but he's almost as good. Jordan Cruz. You're in the house and in your face here on this Thursday night. Beautiful Thursday night, depending upon what part of the world you're in. Hey, we talked about the untimely and tragic death of Vincent Jackson last segment. We're going to talk a little bit about something a little more positive this time around, although it may not be too positive, depending upon your views on these athletes. It's going to be a crazy offseason with quarterback movement and shaking. We've already saw one major deal go down involving a former MVP candidate, former number 2 overall pick that the Eagles traded a king's ransom to get. They flipped them today. Almost called them flopped them, which the deal may wind up being a flop. Who knows? We'll discuss that in a couple seconds. But here's what we know going in. Deshaun Watson wants out of Houston in the worst possible way. There's grumblings that Russell Wilson may want out of Seattle. We don't know what's going on with Dak Prescott. We don't know what's going on with David. I almost called him David Carr. Derek Carr. David Carr's been out of the league for a while. Jimmy Garoppolo appears on his way out. Cam Newton on his way out. What's going on with Drew Brees? What's going on with Ben Roethlisberger? Phillip Rivers retired. Plus, we got these guys in the NFL draft. Some kid by the name of Trevor Lawrence, who is supposedly the next big thing, who has been a superstar waiting to happen since he was in high school. We got Justin Fields. We got Trey Lance. We got Zach Wilson. I mean, it's going to be a crazy year for quarterbacks. Could Tua Tagovailoa be dealt after 1 year? We got a lot to talk about in terms of quarterbacks. But first things first, we're going to talk about this deal that just happened earlier today. Carson Wentz dealt to the Indianapolis Colts for a pair of draft picks. Paul, I know you want to chime in on this because you're a diehard Philadelphia Eagle fan, have been for as long as I've known you. The Eagles get a couple of draft picks, I believe a conditional second-round draft pick and a second this year. Is that right? Or fill in the blanks for me here.
Okay, so they have a second-round draft pick this season, or this draft coming up. They have a second round next year, But that's a conditional second round that could convert to a first round should the Colts make the playoffs or Carson Wentz plays 75% of the games, which is the stupidest freaking deal I've ever heard in my life. Like, I've never heard of a conditional trade like that. Have you?
Not in the NFL. So fill me in. So if they make the playoffs, or Carson Wentz plays 70% of the games, 70% of the snaps, they don't get to pick?
If the Colts go to the playoffs, that pick converts to a first round. But if they don't make the playoffs, or if Carson Wentz gets injured, it stays a second round.
Well, I think the Colts are a lock to make the playoffs. They made it this year, and they're returning most of the team. They got salary cap space out the wazoo, even with taking on Wentz's contract. They've got a good coach. They've got a good offensive line. They got a great defense. So they're pretty safe there. Can Wentz stay healthy for, to play that much? He was healthy this year for the first time, but he got benched. He was healthy last year too. I don't know. I want to go ahead.
Well, this is the only part that I'm going to defend Carson Wentz on. The rest of it, I'm going to dog him. This year, Carson Wentz did not have an offensive line that would give him the 2 to 3 second drop back that he actually needs. So that's the only thing I will say positive about Carson Wentz. It wasn't his fault for the most part. The Eagles were riddled with injuries this season. Oh, my goodness. It's insane the amount of injuries they had to the offensive line, to the defensive line, to the wide receivers, to pretty much everybody. I think Carson was the only one that didn't get hurt this year for once. But the fact that, okay, so he goes to the Colts. The Colts have a great offensive line. They have a top 10 defense. They have a good receiving core. I hate to say it, but I think Carson's going to flourish in Indianapolis. He's a good guy. Very nice guy, off field, great guy. I do not see Carson Wentz as a leader. I think he would make a great backup, but as a starter, I do not see him as a starter. Not anymore. He's like a deer in headlights if anybody even comes near him.
Well, here's the point I want to bring up, too. He also works exceptionally well with Frank Reich. You're not going to get the garbage and the gibberish that you got with him and Doug Peterson, where he'd wave off plays and he'd call his own stuff on the fly. And look, if you're Tom Brady, you can get away with that crap. Okay? If you're Drew Brees, you can get away with that crap. If you're Aaron Rodgers, you can get away with it. Ben Roethlisberger, you can get away with it because they've got this thing called tenure. When you're 4 years in the league, 5 years in the league, and you're still establishing yourselves, you don't have that clout. Now I am going to say, you look at what they gave up to get Carson Wentz back in 2016. They gave up the number 2, to get the number 2 overall pick. They gave up the 8th, a 3rd or 4th round pick, and a 1st round pick, along with a 2nd. So it seems like they gave up a lot to get him. But that 1st round pick was a low 1st round pick, which, the draft's a crapshoot, and the lower in the 1st round you get, the more it is. They gave up a lot more to get than they got back for him. But I think at this point, it's more recuperating cost because let's be obvious. Let's call the obvious here, Paul. This was a divorce that needed to happen. With or without Doug Peterson, this separation needed to happen. Carson Wentz's days in Philadelphia were done.
Carson's days in Philadelphia were done about week 4.
Exactly. You couldn't bring him back. When they benched him, when Jalen Hurts showed a pulse, there's no way you could bring him back. It was a toxic environment. And again, I know everybody wants to point the finger at Doug Peterson. That's not it. He's gone. Believe me. And if this doesn't prove that Doug Peterson wasn't, that it wasn't just Peterson, the fact that they traded Wentz afterwards ought to solidify that question all along. Now, the question is Jalen Hurts the answer? Are they going to roll with him this year and see what they got? And if it's not him, do they pick a quarterback next year? What are they doing with the quarterback position there in Philadelphia at this point?
At this point, it looks like Jalen Hurts is going to be the starter. He actually already called a meeting with all the receivers. He wants to do extra off-season workouts, which is really cool. but call it what it is. The Eagles are going to be rebuilding for the next 2 to 3 seasons.
Yeah.
And, we'll see where it goes. I mean, when Jalen Hurts took over for Carson Wentz after he got benched, you actually seen the skeleton of the Eagles who was left rally around Jalen Hurts. It's almost like when Carson was in there, the players were like, screw it. He's not playing good. Why should we?
And this actually circles all the way back to the Super Bowl win. It's almost like Carson has the talent, but there was something missing with the team when Carson was on the field. And I mean,
he lacks leadership.
He was an MVP, but there had been problems with Carson there. I mean, remember the Alshon Jeffrey nonsense?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there had been grumblings that there were issues with Carson in the locker room from day one. And I mean, and Carson is a good guy. I'm not saying anything beyond that point, but I'm just going to put this as bluntly as I possibly can and nicely. And I'm not making any accusations here about Carson the man, but you're taking a kid from rural Minnesota and from rural Minnesota that went to school in South Dakota, North Dakota, one of the Dakotas, and you're putting him in a team in Philadelphia. Okay. That's square peg, round hole. He's more of a fit for a team in Indianapolis. Let me just put that as bluntly as I possibly can. Okay. There was a lot of cultural issues with Carson Wentz in Philadelphia. And I'm saying this from inside knowledge. It's not that he, was a bad guy, that he, it just wasn't a fit.
No,
I think Jalen Hurts is more of a fit for them. I think Carson will be a fine fit in Indianapolis if he can get over his skittishness in the pocket. And it's ironic, Jordan, I'm going to kick this to you. How ironic is it? The two top picks in the 2016 NFL draft, Jared Goff and Carson Wentz, both the Rams and the Eagles paid a mint to get them. And now the Rams got Matt Stafford in exchange for Goff, but they also had to give up a lot of extra pieces to get him. Both had the same issues, and both were basically given away, right or wrong, in the same year, within weeks of each other.
Yes, absolutely. And this was something a question I was going to pose, more of a rhetorical one, but I mean, it's just crazy how they were both the number 1 and number 2 overall picks in their year, and now they're both traded just a couple days apart from each other. And the question is with both of those guys, do you consider them a success with their teams? Because look, both teams made a Super Bowl. The Rams lost that Super Bowl to the Patriots, and the Eagles won it. However, Carson Wentz was not on the field. So, think about how many long-term franchise quarterbacks haven't even made a Super Bowl. And those guys are looked at as successes, having successful careers. So it's interesting to think about. I think in terms of Carson Wentz, it's nothing's wrong physically, I don't think. It's all mentally. It started with that Super Bowl with Nick Foles coming in and being the savior, and then coming back the next year, it turned into a competition. Then you'd bring in Jalen Hurts in the second round. And then, from there, he was mentally, I don't think he was ready to handle that. You want to talk about he's a Midwestern guy. And then you're going into a town that, Philadelphia is a tough place, So I think he's going to do a lot better in Indianapolis with Frank Reich, with an actual offensive line. I mean, think about this. Last year, Carson Wentz was sacked 50 times. You know how many times Phillip Rivers was sacked last year? 19. It's a big.
Yeah, it's a huge difference.
Huge difference. And listen, if Andrew, just to give you some perspective, folks, if Andrew Luck had only been sacked 19 times, Andrew Luck would still be the starting quarterback and still be in the NFL with the Colts. Okay. That is huge, especially for somebody that has major pocket issues like Carson Wentz does. And I think you bring up a valid point about it being a mental thing with Carson Wentz. I think it's a mental thing with Jared Goff too. The physical talent is definitely there. It's mental though. Let's think about this. Like you said with Wentz, you don't win a Super Bowl. Philadelphia, and this ain't a knock on Philly as a Pittsburgh fan, Paul. I'm not going in that avenue. It is like Jordan said, it is an atrocious town to play in. It is brutal. There is expectations everywhere. And other than maybe New York and Boston, I can't think of a town where the bar is higher than it already is. You know,
isn't it great?
Well, there were people though, and then when Nick Foles was traded, there were people that are still ticked off that they traded for Foles over Wentz. I mean, and Foles is like the weirdest story. He's Superman in Philadelphia. He's Clark Kent everywhere else. He's he's barely a starter anywhere else, but he's God in Philly. It's crazy. But he had all those pressures everywhere. Then you look at Jared Goff, and he has not been the same since that Super Bowl against New England, where Brian Flores' defense just chewed him alive. You know, maybe change the scenery was good for both of them. And for Philadelphia, look, if he plays 70% of the games and the Eagles recoup a first-round pick, it just wasn't going to work for him there. It just was not going to work for Carson in Philadelphia. And if you get a first and a second for him, it's not the same as what you gave up, but you got the best of Carson Wentz. I just think it was time to move on for both sides.
Yeah, I agree. You know, you said it best. You know, it was a divorce that needed to happen. However, it is the most expensive divorce in NFL history with $28.7 million dead cap space now.
Sure. I mean, listen, I haven't seen a divorce this expensive since Elizabeth Taylor's 6th and 7th. I mean, you know, Jacques Gabor has nothing on this one. I mean, but bottom line, I mean, sometimes, you know, it was a sunk cost. Let's be realistic. You're in a marriage where both sides are cheating on the other. Both sides are miserably unhappy. They're sleeping in opposite bedrooms. They're not talking. Sometimes you just have to bite the bullet. Sometimes you really do.
Yeah, it was time to go. I mean, half the city, like we said before the show, half the city celebrating, the other half's on fire. It's Philly. You know, that's all you can say. It's Philly.
Exactly. And one quick closing thought on this. And since we talked and tied this in with Jared Goff, I know this is a couple weeks old, but I want to give my perspective on that before we move on to Deshaun Watson, who's a real big one, and Russell Wilson. My thoughts on this, Jordan, I want to get your thoughts because you're in California. It's a risk because Matthew Stafford's 33 years old. That's pretty old for quarterback standards. And he's a guy who's been around the league a while. He's going on his 11th year next year, 12th year. I mean, he's been around the block. But at the same time, Goff was another one. They sunk a lot of money into him. All of it's guaranteed. He's got 2-3 more years left on his deal and a guaranteed deal. Matt Stafford has none. His contract's non-guaranteed. I think Stafford is going to put them in a position to win, or at least be in a position to make the Super Bowl next year. I think he's a better quarterback than Goff. I don't know if Goff's issues are fixable. I really don't. Once it's in your head, and he's going to a situation where the offensive line in Detroit's not any better than it was in Detroit. We're not talking Carson Wentz where he's going from one of the worst offensive lines to probably the best. He's going to a crappy offensive line in Detroit where Stafford got killed, which is a testament to his toughness. He was able to put up 4,500 plus yards a season behind a patchwork garbage offensive line where they were picking up Philadelphia scraps and giving them big money to put bodies in there. He's going to a bad offensive line. I think he's unsalvageable. Stafford, you're going to get 3-4 more good years out of, I think. So, yeah, you gave up 2 first-round picks along with that. But, again, is the juice worth the squeeze, in your opinion, in that deal?
So, Goff is the one that I actually, bad for in the situation. He was inconsistent at times. There were times where he looked like he was walking on water, and times where, he couldn't hit the broadside of the barn with the football. But I thought he was good enough. I still do. I just think it comes down to these relationships. The coach and quarterback relationship is just so important. You have to get that right first. And I think the relationship between Goff and McVay, at some point it got broken. And look, when Matt Stafford was traded, or when it was announced that he was traded to the Rams, you know where he was? He was with Sean McVay. They're boys, they're buddies, they're already friends. I think that relationship is already going to be a million times better than that with Goff, and therefore I think the performance is going to be there as well. I think that's with a lot of these guys, a lot of these quarterbacks, they come in, they all have the talent. It's, do you have the right fit with the personnel? Do you have the right fit with the coach? Do you have the right fit with the scheme, and putting that player in the correct position to be successful?
Relationships are everything. And look, Goff obviously is a talent. I mean, the guy was picked number 1 overall for a reason. If you're a starting quarterback in the NFL and you're picked that high, you're that way. And like you said, that building relationship between Goff and Stafford, who knows? I mean, I'm saying he's got 3 or 4 good years left. We're looking at a guy in Tom Brady who's still putting up 4,000 plus yards, and he's 42, 43 years old. I mean, who knows?
He might play until he's 60.
Yeah, the guy could probably be George Blanda, for God's sakes. One thing we do know is at least you don't have to worry about Matt Stafford putting up crude comments about how he wants to do the dirty with Goff's girlfriend. I mean, or with McVay's girlfriend. But, that's yeah. So relationships are everything. And that's, I think what really, I mentioned it earlier with Carson Wentz. He has a great relationship with Frank Reich. We knew he didn't have a good one with Doug Peterson. But when we come back, we're going to talk about Russell Wilson. We're going to talk about Deshaun Watson. That's an interesting conundrum in its own right. We'll also talk about the NFL draft and more. You're listening to Kings of the Roundtable here on RGTR Radio, sports that matters.
You're listening to RGTR, Red Gull Talk Radio.
We now return to the Three Amigos. Or is it Three Stooges?
Cool. Fire, 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 fire.
It's Kings of the Roundtable with HD, Jordan, and JP on RGTR, Red Gull Talk Radio.
I've got to share some good news and bad news with my Marine brother here, Jordan Cruz. Hoorah! So
I'll let you have that for yourself.
The bad news is, I agreed for Lent this year because I'm a practicing Catholic to not swear for 40 days for Lent, right? And I have to put a quarter in every time I swear, right? So right. I guess that's the bad news. Well, the good news is my kid's college degree and house and car is going to be paid for before the end of the week. So I'm surprised we've gone through 45 minutes of this show without swearing. I mean, between me and Paul alone. And I know you're a Marine. I know you've said a few vulgarities in your time.
Yep, I've hung with sailors, but, we're professionals here, so I expected nothing less.
Yeah, we're professionals. See, when the lights go on in the radio studio, we can keep it PG. Now, saying we can keep it PG. Now, if you expect G radio, well, you need to listen to the Disney Channel. That's PG. That's a step too. Yeah, PG is about as far as we're going to go. You're listening to the Kings of the Roundtable, featuring the only radio show that can say that it's got a man, a myth, and a legend on it that served in the U.S. Marines and proudly, and a man who beat the man that carried the sun or grabs the sun or does all that stuff with the sun. Mr. Jordan Cruz, Louisiana's finest. Of course, a man. We got a mixing pot in here. We got a man from Pittsburgh. We got a man from Philadelphia. And we got a man from Louisiana. That's quite a diverse crowd. Oh, we got somebody in here from San Diego, or board ops from San Diego. Or I don't want to call him board op. That sounds like the meaning of the derogatory. Board ops are the grunts. Yeah, he's our executive producer. He's from San Diego. That's like every point of the globe on there, ain't it? Yeah. Oh, Paul, since you're back, I got good news for you, too. You're going to love this news. You're going to love this news a lot.
Okay.
The Penguins beat the Islanders. 4-1, baby. 4-1. Take it in. Let's get to.
That's a private joke, guys.
Let's get to our NFL chatter before we start telling that story. And
get kicked off the air before we get started.
By the way, Furnace and LaFon beat LOD. Anyway, one of these days we're going to explain these inside jokes way inside. Hey. We talked last segment about Carson Wentz getting dealt and Jared Goff's deal, the Jared Goff, Matt Stafford deal. Another quarterback who has one foot on his way out the door apparently is Deshaun Watson. There's been all sorts of craziness and shenanigans going on. Shenanigans. I can speak, I promise. Going on in Texas as Watson is demanding a trade. Not happy with the direction of the Houston Texans franchise and. Frankly, who can blame him, man? J.J. Watt Ashburn was given his release. They hire Nick Caserio to be their general manager, which goes against what Watson wanted. And before anybody gets on here and says, well, but Jay, he's a quarterback. He should just stand in line. Let me tell you a little story here, guys. If you think that Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers and any other franchise quarterback doesn't have say on what their team does and who they bring in as coordinators and coaches, you don't follow this sport at all. Deshaun Watson is a franchise quarterback, period, end of discussion. When he signed his contract, it was in his contract that he would have say in personnel matters. That goes on with all the franchise guys. It goes on with Mahomes. It goes on with Brady. It goes on with Rodgers. Trust me when I tell you, it goes on with Kyler Murray down here. I know for firsthand knowledge, okay? And Kyler Murray, as good of a quarterback as he is not the quarterback that Deshaun Watson is, all right? These quarterbacks have clout. So for all you ham and eggers that are sitting there saying, mind your P's and Q's, and yeah, I'm talking to you, Brett Favre. Yeah, I'm talking to you, Dick Vermeil. Both of you have a ton of stones to sit there and run your mouth, especially you, Brett Favre, when you tallywagged and skipped the Mailua on your way out of Green Bay every opportunity you had because your hiney hole was sore because they drafted Aaron Rodgers, okay? And especially you, Dick Vermeil, who got chronic migraines and left Philadelphia in 1980 and left St. Louis in 2001 or 2000 after you won your Super Bowl. None of you have a foot to stand on, so sit down and be quiet. Okay, Deshaun Watson has every right to take this stance. And if he doesn't feel like the direction of his career is going the way he, like everybody else, is a professional who deserves to move on somewhere else. There's my rant for tonight. But now that we're done talking about Dick Vermeil's headaches and Brett Favre's hiney hole, there's an image. I don't think anybody.
How's he, Nia Jax?
Yeah, right. My hole. I don't think anybody wanted to picture that image, but the Texans are saying they're not going to move on, Jordan. And I know you wanted to bring up some points on Deshaun Watson. I think that he's going to put him in a position where they have to because he holds the cards here. He absolutely holds the cards here. And right now, there are two teams in this draft that could absolutely give them what they want. One is the Miami Dolphins. One is the New York Jets. What are your thoughts on Deshaun Watson there real quick? Or not real quick, take your time, I should say. But
Absolutely. Well, all that was very beautifully said, might I add.
Thank you, my brother.
I respect what the management of the Houston Texans are trying to do. You know, with Nick Caserio, I wouldn't want to get rid of Deshaun Watson either. If he was my quarterback, you know. But like you said, I don't think they're going to have much of a choice because what you can't do is you can't be in your first season be the guy who has the franchise quarterback who sits out for a year. So I think when push comes to shove, we're in a staring contest, and I don't think Deshaun Watson's going to blink. So yes, I do believe that at some point they're going to have to move on from him. Where he goes, I don't know. There's every single team who doesn't have Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, or Russell Wilson should be interested, or Patrick Mahomes should be interested. But I have a question for you guys. I'm going to name a couple star players here in the league, and you tell me which one you'd rather have. Khalil Mack, Jalen Ramsey, DeAndre Hopkins, Odell Beckham Jr., Matt Stafford, Carson Wentz, or Deshaun Watson.
Are we factoring age, contract, and the whole McCoy in that, or are we just talking like apples to apples in terms of production?
Well, the reason I bring these guys up is because all these guys, with the exception of Deshaun Watson, are probably the biggest names that have been traded over the past 2 or 3 years. And for my money, I'm going with Deshaun Watson. That's who I would rather have. Now, in Khalil Mack and Stafford and Ramsey, you're talking they were traded for 2 firsts. Mm-hmm. I was traded for a first and a couple players. Hopkins was traded for, stupidly, might I add, a second rounder. And Carson Wentz was traded for a third and maybe a first. So in terms of trade value, Deshaun Watson clearly has the highest ceiling there.
Oh, yeah. If you want my perspective, I'm trading for Deshaun Watson of those lists all day, any day. Because, you know, you're talking a guy who is a franchise level quarterback who right now, Jordan, at 25 years old is probably easily at worst the 5th best quarterback in the NFL. And I'm saying that very loosely at worst. 25 years old, 5th best quarterback in the NFL. Only going to get better from here. He's got 12, 13 years left. 3-time Pro Bowler, would be a 3-time All-Pro if it wasn't for this guy named Patrick Mahomes. Those players don't grow on trees. Give me Deshaun Watson all day, every day. Go ahead, I'll continue on. Continue on.
That was just my point. So all these teams, every single team should be putting in a phone call. And if I'm the Jets, if I'm the Dolphins, if I'm the Panthers, even who, it doesn't matter who I am. I would offer, and pun intended, a king's ransom for Deshaun Watson.
I'm a Dolphins fan. I don't hide that fact. I've been a Dolphins fan since I was a little boy. And the nonsense I hear coming out of Dolphin fans' mouths on message boards right off their fingertips. No, that's too much for him. Listen, Tua Tagovailoa may wind up becoming a very good NFL quarterback. Deshaun Watson is what Miami fans hope Tua becomes. Okay?
Yep.
If the cost is Tua and the 3rd pick, which, by the way, was Houston's anyway, that 36th pick, which was Houston's anyway, and another 1st-round pick, you run to the stands and take that, because Tua may wind up making you a playoff team next year. Keyword may. Watson makes you a Super Bowl team, in my opinion, or at least has them punching the Chiefs in punching range of the Chiefs. And I don't know, man, Jordan, I've seen a lot of crummy quarterbacks. No disrespect to these as men, because I know it's hard to be a quarterback in the NFL. I've been around for John Beck. I've been around for Cleo Lemon. I've sat by in horror and watched Nick Saban pick Dante Culpepper and his 2-shot knees over Drew Brees. And I've lived that down for 13 years, okay? The Miami Dolphins have an opportunity to get a franchise-changing quarterback in Deshaun Watson. If the cost is 3 first-round picks and Tua Tagovailoa, you do it, because he makes them a better team. And all these people, well, he's not going to have any targets to throw the football to. Number one, Mike Gesicki is one of the better tight ends in the NFL. Devontae Parker is a darn good wide receiver. They still will have their second round pick this year. And did you see the wide receivers that Watson was throwing the football to the last 7-8 weeks of the regular season, Jordan Paul? Yeah. Kiki Cote, Chad Hansen. Chad Hansen's been handed down more than a Hansen CD at a Goodwill store.
Oh, no.
Okay, Chad
that was pretty good.
He's been handed down by 8. He's been on 8 different teams. He was on 3 practice squad teams last year. He put up 150 yards on his first time with Watson. Great quarterbacks will make great wide receivers, not the other way around. So don't give me this garbage. He's not going to have anybody to throw the football to. Give me a break.
There is.
He didn't have anybody.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
There is no price I would not pay for Deshaun Watson. And so whether the Dolphins or the Jets, and you say there was no options, no receiving options for either of those teams, to be honest. But here's my point. There's another receiver, and now this may come off as more of a speculation, but there's another wide receiver out there who got traded from a New York Football Giants team who is potentially going to be on the market. I'm telling you, consider this. You trade whatever price for Deshaun Watson, and then if you have to give up your next 3 second-round picks for Odell Beckham Jr., you do that. We're talking whatever. If somebody pulls a trigger on that, they're in the Super Bowl.
Oh, sure. Well, I'm telling you this right now. The last thing I want to see after watching Tom Brady for 14, 15, 16 years in New England, I do not want to see Deshaun Watson in New York. I don't.
No.
Okay. You get this guy in Miami. I don't care what the price is. And if Tua turns out to be a good quarterback, great. Then it works out perfectly for Houston as well. But that's a risk. Let's not act like Tua doesn't come with a ton of risk, guys. The guy destroyed his hip last year. The guy has injury histories out the wazoo. And I'll throw another wide receiver out there that you don't have to spend anything on. You can keep your draft picks. Like I said, Parker's a good wide receiver. I'll throw another wide receiver out there that's going to put up big-time numbers while playing with Blaine Gabbert and Nick Foles outside of Philadelphia and Mitch Trubisky, Allen Robinson of the Bears.
has been a productive big game wide receiver playing with less than ideal quarterbacks. You put him with Deshaun Watson, he'll put up 1,600 yards easy. He'll put up 10 touchdowns a year. If this guy puts up 10 touchdowns with C-level quarterbacks, no disrespect intended, what's he going to do with Deshaun Watson, who makes Kiki Kute, Kiki, do you love me? Not really, and Chad the fourth Hansen brother that nobody talks about? What's he going to do with Allen Robinson, who looks good hasn't had a good quarterback since high school? I mean, there's another one. I like the idea of Odell Beckham too. I like that idea. If you got to give up 2/3 and 2 seconds, you do it. Because look, this team is in striking position. They got a good defense. They got a good offensive line. They got a good head coach for the first time, not a one-year wonder like Tony Sparano, God rest his soul, and not somebody whose claim to fame was once upon a time carrying Peyton Manning's bags when he put up 5,200 yards in a season. Jordan, you and me and Paul could have been the offensive coordinator of that Bronco team, and he would have put up the same thing. They've got a head coach that knows what he's doing. Get him. I don't care what the cost is. I'm sorry.
How can you follow that?
Well, I just, I've witnessed my team just throw out subpar quarterback after subpar quarterback after subpar quarterback. I mean, it's just, I've suffered, and I suffer. I shouldn't use the term suffer. There are people out there that are legitimately suffering, okay? And I put my foot in my mouth there, and I apologize for that. There are people out there. As a sports fan, I've endured a lot of
crap,
trying times with my team since Marino retired, okay? I mean, John Beck, they said Cleo Lemon, Pat White when they tried to run the Wildcat, Chad Henne, 7 years of Ryan Tannehill, which I'm sorry, the guy's not as good of a quarterback as he looks in Tennessee. I don't care what people say. I mean, we've got a chance to get a quarterback right now it's already a top 5 quarterback. And, the 3 quarterbacks ahead of him are Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers. So right now it's him and Mahomes are going to be neck and neck for the next decade. You make the move. I don't care. I don't care if you got to give up 2 first-rounders, which let's look at this from a different perspective, okay? 2 of the picks they'd be giving up, okay, 3 and 36 were Houston's anyway that they got for Laramie Tunsil. So let's look at it from a perspective here. They'd be basically getting Deshaun Watson for Laramie Tunsil. They'd be getting Deshaun Watson and Noah Inguinoy, who's the cornerback that they got from with that Houston pick last year, for Laramie Tunsil and a first-round pick. Is that a bad deal?
Not at all.
No, Tunsil's a middle of the pack, maybe top 10 offensive tackle, but you give me offensive linemen are important, but the quarterback stirs the drink.
I don't know if it's just rumor or whatnot, but I heard the 49ers are also in the running for Watson.
They're in the running. I just don't know if they've got the chips to make it happen. I know Houston's going to want at minimum a top 10 pick, and I don't blame them. I mean, if you're trading a 25-year-old quarterback that's that good, you're going to want to split the bank. You're going to want a Herschel Walker deal, or like Jordan, what you said. They got 2. The Lions got 2 first-round picks plus Jared Goff, who was a former number 1 overall. As much as Goff may be, more bust and boom, you got basically akin of what's 3 first-round picks for a 33-year-old, right? Watson's 25, and he's already – the 49ers got that 12th pick. If they're getting him back, they're probably going to want Nick Bosa and another first in return. I don't think that's asking much. Now, here's an interesting one that popped up online, that apparently the Panthers are offering 3 first-round picks and Christian McCaffrey, which this article that wrote said that they think that's a crazy deal, that the Texans should turn that down. I think that's lunacy myself. If you're offering McCaffrey and 3 firsts, and I'm Houston, I'm running to the stands. I'm saying, yes, give me that trade. Give me that trade right now. I'm asking for Teddy Bridgewater back, but I'm saying, yeah, you give me that deal.
Who wrote that article?
Let me get up the article and take a look and see here.
Yeah. Look, I like Christian McCaffrey, but I got to disagree here. I mean, he's a great running back, a transcendent running back, but you don't need a transcendent running back to win a chip. You need a pretty good.
Not to cut you off, it was Anthony Wood on Sports Illustrated. Go ahead, Jordan. No, continue on.
Oh, okay.
That was it. We're talking about who you're going to give me back. You know, it comes down to Christian McCaffrey or Darnold or Tua. You know, I hate to say it's a quarterback-driven league, but I'll cut it back to you.
Well, I take, of the three, I would probably take Tua. I think Darnold. Let's kick it to the next segment. I want to continue the discussion on the next segment because I'm getting told we're up against it. But hey, folks, when we come back, we're going to talk more about Deshaun Watson and continue this fantastic discussion with the three amigos. Or as I said, we're not the Three Stooges. We're the most professional, prepared show in the radio airways today. You're listening to Kings of the Roundtable here on RGTR.
You're listening to RGTR, Red Gull Talk Radio.
We now return to the Three Amigos. Or is it Three Stooges?
Cool. Fire, 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 fire.
It's Kings of the Roundtable with HD, Jordan, and JP on RGTR, Red Gull Talk Radio.
So here's an interesting headline on ESPN.com as we speak. Pittsburgh Steelers general manager Kevin Colbert gives a lukewarm assessment of Ben Roethlisberger's future with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Would that not be some crazy, crazy stuff, gentlemen? Ben Roethlisberger leaves the Pittsburgh Steelers because they can't afford to bring him back. They are capped out to the max. The New England Patriots need a quarterback. Just saying. Just saying. The Cam Newton experiment didn't work out. Would that be crazy or what?
Do you actually think that they would trade Roethlisberger to another AFC team, though?
I think they just would cut him.
Yeah, but if he gets cut, you think he goes in somewhere else? I kind of can't see it.
Did you ever think Tom Brady would leave New England to would go anywhere else?
You're right about that, no?
I mean, I'm not trying to be that came off more condescending than it was intended to. I mean, I wasn't. That's just hypothetical. I mean, there's just been some crazy things that have happened. I never thought Brady would leave New England. I never thought that Peyton Manning would finish his career outside of Indianapolis. I mean, who knows? I mean, if you cut Ben, he may wind up going with a chip on his shoulder. You know, he may want to go somewhere that was somewhere something to prove. I mean, it's just interesting.
Well, if Houston loses Watson, you know, it's possible he can jump down to the Texans.
That's a plausibility too.
I suppose anything is possible.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Doesn't he have a $40 million cap hit this year as well?
Yeah, he does, and they've got some big time issues coming up in the future. I mean, you know, obviously this year Juju Smith-Schuster's a free agent, James Conner's a free agent, Bud Dupree's a free agent. Up in forthcoming seasons, you've got to worry about re-signing T.J. Watt. You know, Minka Fitzpatrick's going to be due soon. I mean, they're in big trouble cap-wise. And, you know, you got a 38, 39-year-old quarterback who is, call it as it is, as great as he's been for the Steelers. He's much closer to the end than he is the beginning. And he's showing signs of slipping. The problem is they don't really have anybody in line to take over for him. That's the big concern I have is, you know, I don't think that Mason Rudolph's it. And yeah, they just went out and signed a young man from Washington that they just drafted in Haskins. They just signed that Haskins, but I don't know if he's ready, you know, so it's a weird conundrum. And,
I mean, the Cowboys, if they let Prescott walk, you know, there's a potential home there.
Yeah, that'd be something else if he goes to Dallas. That'd be an interesting perspective too. Just goes to show you what a crazy offseason it's been going to be for quarterbacks. I mean, we just mentioned a few scenarios. Roethlisberger possibly going New Orleans, Jordan. I mean, although I think they're going to wind up going with filling the blanks here. Winston.
Yeah, I agree. I think, but at the end of the day, it's going to be Jameis Winston starting quarterback. Which, I mean, anytime you're losing a Hall of Fame level quarterback who's been, been the leader, the guy, the star of your team for a decade plus, it hurts. So it would have hurt no matter who we brought in, but we have the talent. I think Jameis can hopefully show some improvements based off of what he did in Tampa Bay. Well, just one of those we're gonna have to see.
Oh, the ability's there. I mean, the guy threw for 5,000 yards in his last year in Tampa. He threw for 30 touchdowns. He's just got to cut down on them interceptions. But here's the teams that need quarterbacks right now this offseason. Now I want to circle back to Watson here in a minute. But the teams that right now we can indisputably say need quarterbacks: the Bears, Washington. I did have Indianapolis on this list, but they don't anymore now. They may not with Carson Wentz. That's assuming that they've paid enough to get Carson Wentz. I'm assuming that he's going to be their guy. Jacksonville, although they're a lock to take Trevor Lawrence. Detroit, maybe they roll with Goff, but I'm not so sure on that. Denver, maybe Minnesota for the future. Miami's a possibility. The Jets, possibility. And that's maybe Atlanta for the future. Then you got Dallas. San Francisco's a definitive, and we don't know what's going on with Pittsburgh. And are we 100% sure that Watson's a guy in New Orleans? I mean, so there's a lot of moving and shaking going on in the NFL in the quarterback position. And Houston's going to need a quarterback again if Watson moves on. Dallas is going to need a quarterback if Prescott moves on. So it's a pretty crazy offseason for quarterbacks. Definitely crazy offseason for quarterbacks. But to put a bow on this Deshaun Watson discussion here, then I want to move on to the NFL draft discussion. You brought up a good point last segment. Running backs, as transcendent of a talent as CMC, Christian McCaffrey may be, and this is going to get some grief, I know. Running backs really, I don't want to call them a dime a dozen. I don't. You can get away and even win a Super Bowl with a passable running game. Correct? Or am I off the mark here?
You're absolutely on the point. That was the point that I wanted to make. Like look at this year, I mean, Ronald Jones, I like him. He's solid. He's not an all-time great running back by any stretch of the imagination. He's not going to put top 5 numbers.
No.
Running back. The Patrick Mahomes at the Chiefs. I mean, Darrell Williams, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I can look at it. You can look at so many examples. The running back is an important part piece, but look, you can get a guy in the 4th round this day and age, and who's a starting caliber running back. It's not a knock on running backs. It's actually, if anything, a compliment as to how many good and talented running backs they have in this day and age, that it's a dime a dozen in terms of I can bring in somebody else and get almost as good production.
Yeah. I mean, can you name me the team that had a dominant running back that won a Super Bowl? I mean, New England, they cycle through halfbacks every year. And who was a dominant running back that they had in their dynasty? Corey Dillon at the end of his career? Who was the last team that had a dominant running back that won a Super Bowl? I can't think of it.
Maybe Baltimore?
Yeah, Baltimore. That's going back. That's going way back. So, McCaffrey's transcendent, but if you're asking me, do I take Tua? Do I take Tua in 3? Do I take Darnold in 2? Or do I take McCaffrey in Carolina's 8, the other picks? This is a tough one because I'd honestly, if we're measuring Tua versus Darnold, I'm taking Tua just because I think Darnold's a bit of damaged goods by no fault of his own, but you're in a no-win situation with him. If he's really good next year, he's in his walk year. Then he becomes expensive. Tua, you've got 2 or 3 more years left of him, right?
And the difference between 2 and 3 really isn't that significant. My thoughts are, if they're moving up to 2, I'm not sure they want to take Darnold. Honestly, if they move up to 2, I'm thinking they're taking Zach Wilson.
It's crazy, but you're probably right.
But do they want to start? I mean, but it's just weird. I mean, if you're Nick Caserio, which I do like him as a GM, you know, even though Deshaun Watson, for whatever reason, he's not crazy about the move, which I'm not in the inner workings of Deshaun Watson's mind or the Texans organization, but I like Nick Caserio. I like the inner workings. He's a smart guy. He's, you know, been a piece of that Patriots puzzle for a long time. But if you're Nick Caserio, you're offered these 3 trades, because that's probably as good. They're probably the best 3 trades you're going to get, right? 2 and 3, and then 36 plus a first next year and a first the following year. The Jets offer you their first, which is number 2, Sam Darnold, and a plethora of a couple first after that. Carolina offers McCaffrey. You know, what should the 3 are you taking from your perspective, on an apples to apples perspective?
It comes down to, you know, like you're saying, who do you value more? Do you value Darnold or Tua more? Or if I'm Nick Caserio, do I even want either of those guys, or would I rather start over with my own guy? So if it were me, out of those offers, I liked Tua the most. However, I would strongly consider doing the proper scouting, doing my due diligence there, getting 2 from the Jets, and starting over with my own quarterback. And then with Darnold, I can either, you know, see what I got for a year, or move on from Darnold as well, or ask for another player instead of Darnold, because they will give him up, and go from there. But to answer your question, Tua, I'd rather Tua over Darnold or Christian McCaffrey.
Great. Okay, so if I'm Nick Caserio, I'm going to get creative. I'm getting on the phone with Chicago or Washington, and I'm making this a 3-way deal. And I'm saying, look, well, then again, maybe not, because it's easier said than done, because my thought process was, you flip Tua to either Chicago or Washington, you get that one of their, you know, I think they pick like 19 and 20 respectively, right? Or 18 and 20, you know, something along those lines. Mm-hmm. You get that second first round pick for Tua, because let's be honest, Tua is going to be better than any of the quarterbacks, because after you get to Mac Jones, and even he had half a season. He had one season and a half a season starting at Alabama. And if you take the Bill Parcells approach at quarterback, he wanted 3 years of a quarterback starting before he really could have get an evaluation of what they are. Mac Jones is no guarantee. And he had 2 all-world wide receivers to throw the football to. But after Mac Jones, it falls off a cliff. Tua is going to be better than any quarterback you're going to get at 20 or 19. Bottom line on that one. I'm seeing if the Bears take Tua for 20. And then I'm taking at 3, if they take that Miami deal, I'm taking Penny Sewell and moving him either to right tackle, or moving Tunzel to right tackle. And then at 20, maybe I don't even do that though. No, at 3, I'm taking Justin Fields. At 3, I'm taking Justin Fields, and I'm taking Sam Cosmi at 20.
That sounds good to me. And I agree. I think if you go pick 2, pick 3, you go and you get the quarterback. And for me, if we're going to talk, you know, Fields or Lance or Wilson, so many people are so high on Zach Wilson, and I think he's a talented kid, but he's not Justin Fields. I'll believe it when I see it.
I mean, you look at the level, and I'm sorry, but to me, level of competition has to count for something. And Justin Fields has played at a high level of competition he played Big Ten competition, for both of his collegiate career. He led Ohio State to the national title game this year. Okay. Ohio State level of competition versus the level of competition that
Trey Lance played in North Dakota State and Zach Wilson played, at BYU, totally different. I mean, Zach, and these comparisons, I hear people saying Zach Wilson this year is Joe Burrow. Not even close, man. Joe Burrow was torching Alabama and Auburn and Texas A&M. All right. Zach Wilson put up 118 yards against Coastal Carolina. Okay. Zach Wilson torched 3-9 Texas Southern. I mean, you're not even comparing the same ballpark. The level of competition has to mean something. And Justin Fields has his warts. He does. Zach Wilson has his warts. Trevor Lawrence has his warts. I'm sorry. Every quarterback has their warts coming into the draft. I like Justin Fields a lot. The kid was a 5-star prospect. He was one of the best quarterbacks coming into his draft class. Would have probably been the number 1 quarterback overall if it wasn't for some kid named Trevor Lawrence, right? They're going to be measured for the rest of their career. This kid's a stud. And if I'm Houston, if you're going to lose Deshaun Watson, you want to get in the position to get the best possible quarterback to make this thing feel less painful. That's Justin Fields behind him. So there you go. You put Fields in there. You draft Sam Cosmi at 20 to give give him protection on the right side of the football. There you be. That's to me what you do. If you get two of the Bears for 20, that's the best of both worlds. And you stockpile draft picks.
I agree. I agree with that.
Oh, you lost over there.
Yeah, a little bit. I kind of got distracted by my wife, so I kind of came in at the tail end of the conversation there.
Let's kick it over to the NFL draft and top 5 discussion. We got Lawrence, we got Fields, we got Lance and Wilson. We discussed a little bit about our concerns about Wilson. Trevor Lawrence going to be as good as possible. I know he's getting, he got surgery this week, but he's expected. It's number 1. It's on his non-throwing shoulder. And he's expected to be back in 4 to 6 weeks. So this should not affect any major problems. You think he's going to be as good as advertised? You think this kid's going to be, they're saying he's the best quarterback to hit the draft since Andrew Luck. You think he's going to be that good? You think he's the real deal?
Well, yes. Short answer, yes. Here's the deal. A lot of guys come through and, being the top pick and there's controversy as to, with whether it was Jameis Winston, Baker Mayfield comes to mind as like, yeah, these guys probably would be the top picks, but we're not entirely sure. Marcus Mariota even. But I find when you talk about guys that are put on this pedestal, the Trevor Lawrence, the Andrew Luck, the John Elways, they seem to knock it out of the park and seem to be right. All you got to do is look at the guy, watch one snap, and you'll see just how talented he is. He has more talent in his finger than some guys have in their entire bodies. The question is Jacksonville going to be the right place for him? And normally I would say no, but I know people have their issues with him, but it's undeniable that Urban Meyer is a very fantastic coach. And I think he's the perfect match for Trevor Lawrence.
I think he is too. I think his scheme will work for Lawrence. I already question some of his decision-making process, and I question some of his off-the-field tactics. Look, he hired the guy from Iowa who was just bagged in the offseason for less than ethical purposes. So I'm immediately questioning. Look, I'm just going to say this point blank on this radio show. I think that within 3 years, are going to get a headache or a backache or chest pains and he's dying again. Okay. Like he did at Florida, like he did at Ohio State. But I think he's going to be productive while he's there. That's what Urban Meyer does. And I think he'll put Lawrence in the right direction. Here's where I think Lawrence is different from the other quarterbacks that you mentioned, Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray out here, the one I'll throw in there. Even Joe Burrow. No disrespect, I know you're an LSU guy. Those guys were one-year wonders, right? Those guys were a lot of ways they burst on the scene like a bat out of hell. Excuse my language. Trevor Lawrence was listed as this prospect scout has ever seen, ever. That's high praise. Trevor Lawrence was destined for superstardom since the moment he stepped foot on Clemson's campus, and he's delivered.
He's absolutely delivered. Which, you want to talk about an ideal trade move? If I'm Houston, I'm calling. This will never happen. But if I'm Houston, I'm calling Jacksonville and saying, "Give me number 1 overall for for Watson." That'll never happen. But I digress. I think he's going to be a superstar quarterback. But I think Jacksonville needs to be a little bit understanding and give this guy a year or two, because that team's a dumpster fire. They are. They're a dumpster fire. There's pieces in place like Chark. I like DJ Chark, and I think they need to be creative. I think they need to move up and get that tight end Pitts out of Florida. If you do that, they're going to be in good shape, but it's going to take a year or two to get there. But I think this kid's going to be a good quarterback. I think Fields is going to be quarterback number 2 in this draft. I have grave concerns about Lance and Wilson. Grave concerns. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about NXT, and we'll give sleepers and bust in this draft, and we'll wrap things up for episode 1 of Kings of the Roundtable. It's been a fun night, folks. Many more of these to come, but we're going to put a bow on this and wrap it up for the night. You're listening to Kings of the Roundtable here on RGTR Radio.
You're listening to RGTR, Red Gull Talk Radio.
We now return to the Three Amigos. Or is it Three Stooges?
Cool. Fire, 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 fire.
It's Kings of the Roundtable with HD, Jordan, and JP on RGTR, Red Gull Talk Radio.
We speak smoother than Ray Combs. We're more big game than Julio Jones. And our women say we're even bigger than John Holmes. It's the Kings of the Roundtable, baby. JP, HD, and JC in the house and in your face for the final segment of what's been 2 hours of power. 2 hours too sweet to be sour with the men of the hour. We hope you've enjoyed every damn second of it, because we sure have. We're not done yet. We got many more where that came from. This segment, we're going to talk professional wrestling. But before we do that, let's wrap up the football talk and put a nice little shiny bow on top of it. Final thoughts. NFL draft. Optimal moves, not involving trades. HD. What do you want your team? What do you want the Philadelphia Eagles to do in the draft? Optimal first round pick. What do you see your team doing? What do you want your team to do? Real quick.
Oh, dude, that is such an open-ended question. The Eagles need so much. But if you're going to build a team around Jalen Hurts, you got to give him weapons. So, I mean, you got Zach Wilson. Not Zach Wilson, sorry. I was reading earlier, Zach Wilson. Jalen Waddle, I would actually try to pick him up from Alabama. You know, he's small. I just think we need some receivers. Give him something to throw to, or try to build the offensive lineup. I mean, God, they need so much.
Hard to think your team just won the Super Bowl 3 years ago
And they're in this quandary.
Yeah, that's one of the big topics. That's what I keep hearing. It's like, you know, the following. It's hard to have repeat Super Bowl back-to-back wins. I mean, Kansas City, case in point. So for them to go from Super Bowl to making the playoffs to not even coming close to making the playoffs, like, it's horrible. So bad.
Jordan, your Saints pick 28th. Ideal scenario, not involving a trade up, a trade down, or a trade for a star or an established name. Who you go with there? 28.
What I'm thinking we do is we need help on the outside the numbers. So whether that's offense or defense, we could go cornerback, Asante Samuel Jr. To mind. We could go receiver as well. We got Kadarius Toney out of Florida. Terrace Marshall could stay in house, take the receiver from LSU. So I think we go there and either bolster up our defense even more or provide another weapon for Jameis Winston to throw to.
Good calls for both of you. All right, mine. Now I'm lucky enough. The Dolphins, as a fan, we've got two. They have 2 first-round picks this year. Number 3 from the Texans as part of the Laramie Tunsil deal, and number 18 their own. Assuming they stand pat, which you already know my thoughts, trade it. But being that's not a scenario that's apt here, I want to say, look, build in the trenches. And Penny Sewell is a monster. I mean, you're talking a guy who's only given up 1 sack in his college career, given up 8 hurries in 2 years. That's unheard of. You're talking a player as a freshman and an offensive lineman who got Heisman votes last year. Okay. Again, unheard of. I take Sewell at 3. And I know people are saying, but you got to get him, get him Smith or get him Chase. And I understand, get wide receiver help. No problem. But to me, build the trenches, especially if you're going to keep Tua, who you need to give your quarterback protection at all costs anyway. But with Tua's expansive injury history, you got to give him more protection. You get him, you slide Robert Hunt into right guard. You've upgraded that position. You move Austin Jackson to right tackle. You've made yourself a dynamic offensive line. Then at 18, you go get Rashad Bateman to play the other wide receiver. To me, receiver there is in the draft. Doesn't drop passes. He's big body, runs good routes. He's got enough speed. He's not going to win, foot races like Ted Ginn, but he's quick enough to where he's got that quick first burst to where, again, he's more of a Mike Evans, but he's a little bit faster than that. So that's my first 2 picks there if I'm Miami. And it doesn't involve a trade. All right, let's move over to professional wrestling talk here, folks. It's been a wild week. Some up-to-date news. COVID actually, Conan currently hospitalized with COVID-19. Certainly wish the best for him. Not good news on that. Saw Sting take a bump yesterday, so he's actually getting into the ring again here soon enough. But talk a little bit about NXT, man. And what a takeover, man. What a takeover it was. And then an event we saw last night. Jordan, you actually brought this up, the spot that Kyle O'Reilly took. Man, this whole thing with him and Cole and the assumed split of Undisputed Era. I mean, I'm assuming that lights out Irene for that group, right? I mean, it's all over but the singing.
Well, you figure the group, I think Jordan's back, but you figure the Undisputed Era formed in 2016.
Yeah.
Or was it 2017?
2017.
2017. Okay, so you got 4 years out of a stable in NXT. I mean, it's time. You can only do so much with a 4-man group. I mean, come on, it's not the New Day. That is a totally different, total different beast, because the New Day is just, insane. But it was definitely time for the Undisputed Era to split. Kyle O'Reilly, Adam Cole, they could have one hell of a feud. And unfortunately, I think the drawback is good old Roddy. I think he's going to flounder, unfortunately.
My perspective on it, and this is my 2 cents, it may not be worth that much. The biggest, you mentioned New Day. The biggest drop with New Day is the fact there wasn't the split that there needed to be. And I think the split should have happened when Kofi won the title.
Yep.
It would have benefited Kofi, would have made a new star out of Big E, which, they're doing fine with him now. And they seem to be back to pushing Kofi into this. Now, whether it's Kofi's getting pushed again to make him, whether he's a warm body to be in the Elimination Chamber and they're actually going to do something with him, who knows? But I think Kofi's world title run could have been much better if they'd split the New Day then. Nobody wanted it, though. We can't split the New Day. Well, tables were meant to be split. That's just the nature of the beast. With this, Undisputed Era, best stable in NXT history, bar none. It's time. Pat McAfee added life to the push, added life to that stable, but it's time to move on. I think actually Roderick Strong
is in a position that Xavier Woods would have been in if they split New Day. Who's he going to side with? Is he going to side with Cole, or is he going to side with, and is he going to side with O'Reilly or Fish? If Fish comes back, which Fish is 46, 47 years old, and he's had a lot of injury issues lately. I mean, there's a lot of stories to be told in this split. A lot. I don't necessarily know if Strong's in deep trouble. I mean, there's life to this angle. There's life to this story. And I think that the way they told it was completely unexpected. It was completely out of the blue. It was completely what professional wrestling should be. Nobody saw it coming at all. And I think it was great. I think what they've done with this has been phenomenal.
Couldn't agree more. I mean, like we said before the show, in my own opinion, now Neil will probably catch a lot of flack for it, NXT is the best show on television. Beats Raw, beats SmackDown, beats AEW with a 62-year-old man taking a powerbomb. It has everything. The women on NXT, look at that triple threat match from TakeOver. That's pro wrestling. That's how women should be spotlighted. It blows the whole Becky Lynch, Sasha Banks, the whole women's evolution. It totally just overshadowed that by a mile.
I mean, sad thing is though, and what saddens me is these names. They look like $1 million on NXT, and then they look great. The booking there is phenomenal. They get booked great. The storytelling's phenomenal. The angles all make sense. I mean, I have no complaints with what I see on there. The women's division is strong. It's top heavy. And that's why I've suggested in the past, and I think they may be doing it with the women's tag belts. I have a suspicion that Dakota Kai and Raquel Gonzalez are going to win the women's tag belts from Shayna Baszler and Nia Jax.
Yeah,
when that happens, put those belts on NXT.
It's long overdue. I mean,
make them the WWE tag belts, but have them defended on NXT. Breathe some life into that division, because you can only do the makeshift tag team so many times on the main roster. I mean, how many tag teams has Lana been in the last 8 months? She was with Natalya, then she was with Asuka, now she's with Naomi. I mean, you had this Mandy Rose. You split the Iconics, and then you put Peyton Royce with Lacey Evans for a brief spell before that abomination of a storyline with her and Ric Flair happened. I mean, then you put Billy Kay with the Riot Squad. I mean, these makeshift tag teams just don't work. Move the tag titles to NXT, and make it like defended on all the brands.
Yep. Jordan, what do you think?
Well, I think NXT is a phenomenal program. They're doing everything right. Absolutely. Especially with the women. Io Shirai is amazing. Io Shirai might be the best wrestler they have, including the men. Now, the fan in me is definitely was upset by the Undisputed Era. Losing my voice there for a second, sorry. But by the Undisputed Era split, which is a good thing. The wrestler in me though is, and the fan too, is just so excited because I know that Adam Cole with Roderick Strong, Kyle O'Reilly, and Finn Balor involved as well. It's going to do some. They're going to do some amazing programs together. So NXT fans out there, you guys have a lot to look forward to, because I mean, I don't know if you guys are privy to much of the independent scene, but what Adam Cole and Kyle O'Reilly did in Ring of Honor was just outstanding, and I can't wait to see them bring it to the Fed.
Absolutely. And I mean, going back to the indie scene, I mean, I don't know what direction they're going to do with Roddy, but him and Adam Cole had quite the set of matches in the Indies and ROH, et cetera, too. I mean, they've got some history all across the board with these guys, so that's why there's a number of different directions they can go with this, and none of them are bad.
No, not at all. And no, it's going to be great TV to watch. And with Roddy, yeah, I tend to side with JP on this. I mean, he's just such an incredible worker, and I feel like Undisputed Era helped him a lot in terms of finding who he is on WWE TV, and I think I personally think he's a much better on the heel villain side than necessarily a babyface. But whatever direction they go, I do think he'll succeed.
Exactly. And hey, NXT just got a lot better, Jordan. They actually signed somebody over to Jordan Paul, to a couple of individuals. One that you're very familiar with, you shared the ring with, the artist formerly known as Eli Drake, now being referred to as LA Knight. You shared the ring with this man. I mean, people have the it factor. Eli's one of those guys, man. Eli Drake is one of those guys, and you've shared the ring with him before, Jordan. What's your perspective on him?
He's incredible. That day was a phenomenal day, and I'd be lying to you guys if I said I wasn't nervous on that day. Sharing a locker room with him, as well as the world's champion Nick Aldis, and with both of those guys, what was so amazing is, I'm sure you guys have experienced this before. When a person walks in the room, before they even say anything, before they even do anything, you just feel the presence. You feel the star power. You feel the it factor that people talk about, and it's a real thing. And Eli Drake certainly possesses all those qualities before he even laced up his boots. And then, of course, once we got into the ring, it was just exponentially increased. And he's so good. I don't want to get too far into the work of terminology, but everything he does, the way he moves, he's so fluid, so smooth. Everything he does is just impactful. He lays everything he does in, and he's so snug, which is a good thing. He's just. I learned a lot from being in the ring with him.
Well, I think there's an old saying we used to have for guys like that: it's no wasted movement.
Sure, absolutely.
I know, Paul, it's sort of a bummer for us because we're a couple of big NWA fans. And just seeing Eli, seeing him go definitely stinks for NWA. But I mean, this is a guy who is so due for a bigger platform. I mean, and I know he was in NXT before back in the day, but I mean, this is much different time. I mean, a much different platform. I knew that Ricker, Eli, LA Knight, whichever name you want to refer to him as. I remember watching him in Old Heartland when he was Dick Rick. And I mean, you knew right then and there, this is somebody that's different. You can tell people that have the it factor right away and those that don't. And he has the it factor. And I just absolutely look forward to seeing what he's capable of doing in NXT. I think that big things are coming for him. I think that he's going to wind up just absolutely taking NXT by storm. And I look forward to it. I think he's overdue.
Yeah, I agree. It's very disheartening for the NWA. I mean, this pandemic really just killed. I mean, NWA Power was a phenomenal show. And when the pandemic hit, it hurt NWA because it's still technically a regional promotion. So, a lot of stars in the meantime, they asked for their release. Some of them, thankfully, are no longer with NWA. Some people, they asked for $50 to come on a radio show.
Yeah,
But that's the good thing about wrestling now. There's alternatives. If you're a wrestler right now and you can't find a place to go, excuse me, then, there's a problem. but, you know, Eli Drake, you know, LA Knight, whatever you want to call him, right now, in my opinion, he's probably one of the best talkers out there. And not only can he talk, not only can he deliver on the stick, he's incredible to watch in the ring. And he can have a match with a broomstick and make it look like a 5-star match. I truly think Eli Drake, even if he gets called to the main roster, which I don't think you should call it the main roster anymore. I mean, NXT is above everything, like I said, in my opinion. So if he gets called up, you know, whatever, he's going to be a star. So I'm just going to leave it at that.
I think so.
Good synopsis. And I think it's a good synopsis and a good way to wrap up tonight's show. Hey, guys, it's been a phenomenal 2 hours. We've enjoyed every single second of it. We hope you have as well. Thank you very much for joining us. Jordan, any final words before we close out shop for tonight?
One final thing. I'm just going to plug Level Up Pro Wrestling. If you want to get trained under the legendary B-Boy, come over and get trained. We're also going to be making our debut on Independent Wrestling TV this Sunday. Make sure to check it out.
Awesome. Thanks for that as well. Be sure to check them out. And Paul, any final closing thoughts?
Yeah, for all my East Coast folks out there, thank you for sticking up with us. I mean, I know it's a 11:45 at night, so, you know, yeah, it's been a blast.
Hey, it's been real. It's been fun. It's been real fun. For Jordan, for HD, I'm JP. We'll see you next Thursday night. Same bat time, same bat channel. We'll see you later for Kings of the Roundtable.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Kings of the Roundtable. Please be sure to join us next Thursday, same bat time, same bat channel for sports talk and other shenanigans that are only truly fit for a king. Kings of the Roundtable on RGTR, Red Gull Talk Radio.
You're listening to RGTR, Red Gull Talk Radio.